Starting recording. Okay. Hi, my name is JR Yusuf, and I am the host of Just JR. It's a YouTube channel where I talk a lot about mental wellness and emotional intelligence. And I'm also the author of the book, The Other F Word. And I am so excited because for the month of May, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm having a chat with two lovely guests. So I will go ahead and introduce them. My first guest is named Patrice Bryan. And Patrice Bryan is a counseling psychology student currently interning at a clinic specializing in adolescents and families who have experienced trauma. Hi, Patrice.
Hello.
And my second guest is Toshia Shaw. Toshia Shaw.
Yeah.
Tashia, excuse me.
Tashika. Yes.
Tashia Shaw is a transformational coach, author of The Green Light of Forgiveness, and an accomplished public speaker. She she helps women and men who have experienced traumatic events in their lives to overcome their past traumas and transform their lives. Hi, Toshia.
Hi.
So I'm excited because today we are going to be talking about a very special book. It's this book right here, and the book is called "The Body Keeps the Score." So I will just read a very brief synopsis about what "The Body Keeps the Score" is. So, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk uses recent scientific advances to show how trauma literally reshapes both body and brain, com- compromising sufferers' capacities for pleasure, engagement, self control, and trust. He explores innovative treatments from neurofeedback, EMDR, and meditation to sports, drama, and yoga that offer new paths to recovery by activating the brain's natural neuroplasty. Based on Dr. Van der Kolk's past clients' own research and that of other leading specialists, The Body Keeps the Score exposes the tremendous power of our relationships both to hurt and to heal, and offers new hope for reclaiming lives. So that's the little like intro. That's the little like, synopsis. And now I kind of want to get into some of these discussion questions.
Yeah.
So my first discussion question for both of you is going to be, how'd you hear about this title and what made you read it?
Mm. Um, I'll just
Oh,
say really quickly that first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Trauma is my jam, and anytime I don't care how tired I am, if anyone wants to talk about it, I'm like, oh, I just get energized because I am all about helping people heal from it. So my background, I'm a trauma survivor. And with being a trauma survivor, this book came up from my clinical therapist when I was getting therapy moons ago, many moons ago. And she suggested that I read the book so I can get a better understanding of how trauma was actually affecting me in my life. So that's how I was introduced to this book. And it's actually helped me with my clients ever since. And it's just, I really, really do. I don't know, I can just really identify with this book in so many areas. It's just coming out the gate, and I know we'll talk about it soon, but that's how I was introduced to this book. It's essential if you work with clientele that has experienced emotional, sexual, physical trauma, you really do need to read this book. It's imperative.
wow,
Mm.
thank you. How about you?
So for me, I'm racking my brain now because I feel like I focused on what the book created for my personal origin story. But I think I used to work in Barnes and Noble, and a lot of people would like tell me about the book, or I would it was a really like good seller. And so I noticed it kept flying off the shelves, but I was like, oh, who wrote this book? So I finally used my little employee discount the second time I worked for Barnes and Noble and bought the book because I had some questions of my own about some experiences that I've had because a lot of people, don't characterize things that they've been through or don't conceptualize it as trauma. So I started reading the book and I was like, oh, this is like fantastic science stuff. And then it's like, okay, this is science stuff. And then we get to the part of the book where it's like, oh my God. And the origin story piece is like, that's how I started my program. So I was in the industrial organizational psychology program, which is basically you want to work at Deloitte and tell people how to make people happy at work. And then I switched over to the counseling psychology side because I was like, no, I absolutely have to do this work. And it was literally this book and like, the universe and all those things.
Is
Wow.
that me, or do you feel like he really, the way he was explaining like the most, like the hardest crap, it just seemed so cool. I was like, yes, I want
Yeah.
more of this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And like, so I feel like, yes, and I feel like the way I came about like hearing about it when it first dropped, like it's a mixtape, when it first dropped, I feel like so many of the people that I follow online, a lot of them are either therapists or people who are mental health advocates or what have you. So many of them were talking about it, and from various arenas of life. For example, I follow quite a lot of sex workers who are, pro sex worker rights and things like that, and who also like educate me in a lot of different ways on just like destigmatizing sex work or just sexuality in general. And so a lot of them were talking about it, and that was very interesting to see from that side of the spectrum, and then also to see people who are therapists talk about it. So it has always been on my radar since when it first was published, but hearing the title, I was just like, I'm not ready. Because I from the title, I was like, I know I'm not ready yet, but I'm gonna get there, but I'm not ready. And I think that's like so important. Um when you feel like I feel like fear exists at many different levels, right? But when like, okay, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna ignore it. I understand that there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of emotion here. So I'm gonna put it in the back of my mind, but I see what's happening. So yeah, I feel like as I've been healing more and more and more over the years and deepening my understanding of myself, um, I was just like, okay, I feel like I'm getting closer to when I can approach this book. And I finally read it, yeah, earlier this month. And yeah, wow, I'm very happy I did.
Mhm.
So the next question is, how prevalent do you think psychological trauma is in our society? And either one of you can start.
Go ahead, Patrice.
So, I mean, what we're currently experiencing is not normal. Um, with the overlap of the trauma of seeing people who look like us being murdered on TV, like, plastered for viewing pleasure, and I say that very sarcastically, like that's not normal. And so everything that we're experiencing that we are now normalizing is traumatic. And so I think that it's way more prevalent than people really think about, that, the fact that when you walk in your neighborhood, you're on edge if you see someone who looks like law enforcement or something like that. Like, imagine that there are people who see cops and don't have a reaction to that. Like, that would be considered the norm. That's what it should be, right? But that's not our normal. And so I think also, um, for example, like you mentioned that I'm currently interning at a trauma clinic, and like neglect is considered trauma. So if your, parent kind of abandons you and, you're left, or whatever situation you are, and a caregiver abandons you, that is trauma. And I didn't know that prior to starting this internship. I think also reading the book, there were things that I didn't realize were considered trauma, or even manifestations of trauma, until it was like, oh no, this is literally what this is. And so I think for that reason, it's a lot more prevalent than we think it is, because we I think have tended to qualify it in these ways, like these very significant things have had to happen to you in this way, versus like the definition of like trauma or experiencing trauma, it can happen to somebody else and you can still be traumatized or develop PTSD even. And so we are witnessing a lot as Black and brown people in this country, and just by virtue of witnessing it, we are being traumatized.
Ooh.
So just to piggyback off the Patrice, what she's saying, especially Black and brown people. So we've always been exposed to traumatic events. That has been our norm. No matter how much you try to remove yourself from the inner city, we've always experienced it, right? It just wasn't plastered, like she was saying, all over. Like we didn't have access to like the internet 24/7 on our phones. I mean, we didn't have it. It just wasn't there. It just wasn't thrown in our face the way it has been. It's sensationalized, all of these traumatic events, from the war stuff that you see, from I mean, I just looked at a video. People are sharing videos, right? It used to be back in the day, we didn't have that ability to just straight away share as it's happening. People are capturing footage of traumatic events. You can be trying to just take a plane to go see your grandma, and somebody is fighting on the plane, triggering you. As Black people, African American people, we carry trauma through our veins, right? Because we have generational trauma that we are carrying. It's imprinted on our DNA. I mean, as far as being fetuses in the womb of our mothers, we had trauma that way. So it's always been, trauma has always been here. It's just now it is being televised. Now we're able to see it, and now it's coming to the forefront because it's just not affecting Black and brown people. But because it's affecting non-Black people, now trauma, PTSD, oh my God, everything is trauma. Anytime it's affecting outside of the Black community, then it's a big deal. But we've always been trying to deal with PTSD symptoms and trauma. We just weren't given the opportunity to say, hey, my name is Toshia. I'm a trauma survivor. Oh, really, Tashia? What type of trauma? And now we have that opportunity to just freely talk about the trauma that we've experienced. But it's always been here with us as Black people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say like that was perfect. I'm not gonna say anything on this. I'm gonna move to the next question because that was both of what you two had to say was just perfect. Exactly. Um, so the next question, the author argues that trauma is the contemporary public health issue. What do you think would need to happen in order to adequately address this?
Mhm. I think we just said it. I
Yeah.
think we just said it. You know what I'm saying? As a social worker, you know what I'm saying? Like, Trees, I'm right there with you, interning. I just graduated last year. Okay, got my little provisional license. That's cute, but now the real work begins, right?
Yes.
It's been great life coaching and all of that, but now we're down to the nitty gritty, which is literally face to face, micro, clinically helping people, right? And I am used to, because of the work that I do on my day job, is helping adolescent youth victims of commercial sexual exploitation and human trafficking. So I mean, it's always been there. The pain has always been there. Human trafficking, sexual trauma, sexual violence against the vulnerable, which are the youth, the women, the elderly, the disabled, right? It's always been there. But now all of a sudden, because it is going outside of the realm of the demographic, which look like us and our brown brothers and sisters, it's a crisis. So it takes that trauma, the traumatic events to happen outside of the Black and brown communities for it to become something that we need to urgently deal with. So I'm just saying there, I think it's a matter of race.
And exactly. And wow. Yeah, exactly. And like I feel like already we're kind of getting into a lot of the critiques that I have about this book. But anyway,
Oh, uh, we need a part two. You ain't enough time in the day for this.
but no,
Okay.
exactly. And it okay, so I started my therapy journey back in kind of like late 2012, late 2011, early 2012. And you know, wonderful journey, right? Filled with like ups and downs and things. But one of my major critiques that I and tons of other people have with clinical psychology and therapy, talk therapy, blah, 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 is that, you know, it's all about like, it focuses on the individual versus systemic change. And even the author does hint at this and also like throw direct like like direct messages that yeah, like we're treating, you know, individuals who actually have the access to actually make it to therapy, who have the access to make it to the right therapy for them or whatever, right? But like this is a global issue. This is about um a lot. It's about a lot. It's not just, oh, you made it to therapy, great job for you, like you started your mental health journey, great. But a lot of the things that have caused us to even get to this place are systemic, you know? And so I think to answer the question, in order for this like to be adequately addressed, I think that first of all, I think this entire country needs to be restructured. And even I don't even know if it should be a country personally. And we definitely have to work on, we have to talk about land back to Native American people, Black American people, you know, who have literally built this country up from the ground up. You know, that needs to be, that they need to be centered in this rebuilding, restructuring. When we talk about things like imperialism, when we talk about global oppression, when we talk about LGBTQ plus people, when we talk about purity culture, when we talk about the ways in which we handle harm in communities, or the ways in which we um, respond to things that we don't like, it needs to be restructured. It needs to be completely restructured. Um, so yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, Patrice, before we move to the next question, or
I'll just add to that really quickly. I saw this on Twitter, I think this week, and I think I saw it twice, that a lot of us don't need therapy. We need liberation. So,
Mm, mm. And there you have it. Drop the mic. Yeah.
um, so the next question that I have is was there any information presented in this book that took you by surprise, slash what were some elements or passages that stuck out to you? So feel free to read like a paragraph or two or something like that if you'd like. And I can start if you want me to, or if one of y'all want to start, that's fine too.
I can actually jump in with, it's a client of his that he talked about, and that's when I knew that trauma was some serious stuff. The client, it might be two different clients now, so I might be mixing it up, but either way, it was one who would like come in as different people. So like one day she was like really trying to be seductive. And another day it was like, don't worry about that girl you saw last week kind of thing. And I don't know if it's the same person, but there was also a client who dealt with some really traumatic things where like he asked her to draw something. Like she was like, "Oh, I trauma. I've never experienced those kinds of things." And then he asked her to draw something, and there was a big penis on the picture, with some other things going on.
The staircase. Yep, yep, yep. I know what you're talking
I
about.
was like, "Oh my god!" Like the way that, and that's when I started to learn about, you know, ADHD and all these other like co-occurring things, or that seem similar things, that it's not always, I thought for a while that like I had some like attention issues or whatever. And then I'm thinking about some of the things that I've experienced and how things manifest, and then I started thinking about trauma, and I was like, it could be something completely different that you deal with a completely different way. And that's what I started thinking about, like, you know, we see one thing, and in the mental health field, you start with the easy thing to diagnose, and then you move, but that's a whole trajectory and resources that you invest in, starting with the small thing to get to what the thing really is. So that has stuck out to me with their experiences, because I had started to think about, I think now I remember why I bought the book. It was therapy. There were things that were coming up that I didn't even remember prior to being asked about them. And so that's what I started thinking about like how serious that like id, super ego, like back to Freud thing really is, where you can just throw things away that happen to you. And when they come back up, you're now like your whole resolve is like depleted because you were not equipped and you're not able to deal with the thing coming back up. And that stuck out to me, those two situations that he described, because it was like a tangible way to hold on to how trauma really is like wild.
Yeah.
I think the thing that stuck out for me the most, I really wasn't surprised by nothing these days. I'm sorry, I'm just not, right? But the one thing that really moved me and really stuck out for me was the disassociation. And, being in the throes of the traumatic event, but being completely disassociated, having your out of body experience, all of that. Personally, I understood that. And then I understood that as far as your clients, because a lot of people don't think that they, like you were saying, Patrice, they don't think that they're victims of or survivors, not victims, but survivors of trauma, right? Or that they were even victimized. That was the one with the whole dissociation. But the other thing was the addiction to trauma, the addiction to the painful event. How the woman that, and we see that time and time again, where you got the client that presents because of a painful, traumatic relationship or domestic or sexual trauma, maybe being pimped out or whatever. But they heal themselves, right? They allow the clinician to help them heal themselves, because I'm a firm believer you cannot heal anyone, okay? You cannot. But getting that help. And then they may be healed in this way, but they go out and they go and look for the same painful event, because we often see that with trauma survivors, they relive the painful ordeal, it's just coming up in different ways. So she was with what she called a normal man or a man, as far as the game, the people will say a square. He was dating probably a nice guy, but he was boring, right? But she went out and found somebody that was a drug addict and all of that. Like, that was just, it really stuck out to me, because people are really addicted to pain. They're addicted to the trauma and the traumatic events. So that's what stood out for me.
I hear you. And kind of on that same note, kind of what I learned is that like the subconscious mind is kind of recreating these scenarios in a way to get like not closure, but to like not process what happened, but like kind of to like process what happened, like to overcome what happened. So you're recreating these same dynamics that existed while you were traumatized, and you might not have like developed the coping skills to actually move through that same situation, so you literally just keep repeating it. Your subconscious mind is literally just trying to like overcome what happened, but it just keeps getting stuck in the same patterns or behaviors that you had when the traumatic event occurred. So I was looking for a very particular passage and I was gonna read it, but I lost it. But it had to do with um there was a section where he learns about EMDR, and he learns about EMDR.
I love it.
So there's a section where he learns about EMDR and he starts to use it. And he uses it on like a colleague, like someone who is also like a mental health provider or something like that. And the colleague was not interested in telling him like his story and doing all of that. Like he was not interested whatsoever. He didn't like like the
Mm-hmm.
author, he didn't like him. So he didn't
Right.
want to open up. He didn't want to share. And also they had to develop that relationship over time, you know, so
Yeah.
which is a huge one. Like the author had an experience where he was really upset and and frustrated, and then like I guess a supervisor or somebody who was like his senior or something like that asked him like, why did you become a therapist? Like, did you become a therapist because you were initially trying to work through some of your own stuff? Like, is that kind of what led you to therapy? And he was like, yeah. And the supervisor was basically saying like, yeah, this is like kind of like a common thing when people who were drawn to into like becoming like a social worker or therapist or whatever, as a way to like kind of either heal their own stuff and also like help heal other people. They oftentimes um, are there to be a healer versus there to allow like the person to do whatever they need to do to heal,
Yeah.
irrespective of how I feel. Like
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that. And so like when I read that, like I was like, yes, I have like personally experienced that. And that like that dynamic it is so like it hurts in a very particular way
Mhm.
when like a mental health provider um is frustrated that they cannot be the thing or the one to help you, and they can't admit that I don't have the tools. And first of all, this is not about me.
Oh, I just had this
This is not
real.
about me. It's about you. This is your therapy session.
Yeah, it's just and I know Patrice can tell us it's literal. They're transferring their emotion. It's called transference, and it's unethical. And you need to check yourself, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I'm sorry, I can't. I let a person know I can't heal you. I will go over. You can book me as many times as you want, and you can talk about the same thing, and I can still give you those same tools. If you don't take them tools, I am not going to take that personal. That is not my business. It is not your time. When you ready, you will. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But that is an abuse of power when someone is transferring their emotions and putting themselves into your therapy session. They take that away from you. It's supposed to be your time. So, I understand that part, yes. That burns me up and it's so unethical. Patrice, how do you guys deal with that on the psychology
You know, there's a couple of things. One thing that I'm thinking of, especially with that, is that like even as I'm new here, I'm in training, so maybe I'm just green and I have all these thoughts. But like part of the big unethical piece for me, given who I want to work with, is that there is money being put into you counter transferring your stuff onto me, and I'm not getting what I need at this session, or you're not equipped. Like that copay, you're getting that. Somebody, you know what I mean? And especially with trauma, and how do we deal with it on the psychology side? I'm not exactly sure. I do know that in my program though, we get evaluations, and if professors are feeling like this one over here, that's what's supposed to happen, this one over here I'm not sure, they can tell you like you will not be able to continue in this program until you get a therapist like today. So that is a protocol that is in place, and I think it's a couple of us who might need to get on that, right?
side?
Um, and the other thing is that, especially with things like trauma, not everybody is equipped to deal with trauma. Not everybody's program takes them
Oh,
through the trauma thing. And so, but not everybody tells you, although we have an ethical responsibility according to the counseling thing, the
mm,
ACA, we have an ethical responsibility to tell you up front what we can and cannot handle, right? And if you go to somebody for trauma and they pull out the CBT on you, like there's going to be some issues. And CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. For those who don't
mhm.
know, a lot of it is basically trying to help you think differently
But
about
they love to pull it out, trees. They love that's they go-to child. They all want to do that CBT. That's me and you. I gotta give you my number.
the
That's
big
a
piece
whole
of
other
it is
conversation.
yes.
They do.
I am not a fan. My clinic uses like trauma focused CBT, but they're not telling me that I have to follow it by the book. They know that I have this like feminist orientation and people centered and all that, person centered and all that, so I can do what I want to do. But for the most part, it's like a guideline. But CBT will give you you thinking of it this way. Are you sure it's really going to happen that way? I don't think you have any evidence that that's the real thing. So you should think about it this way. And for many reasons, and I'm oversimplifying, but for many reasons, you can see why that doesn't necessarily work. And I know that like it's supposed to come up in supervision, like when you are practicing, you're supposed to talk with your supervisor about like feelings that you're having. I'm sorry, I live on a main street, but you're supposed to talk about the supervisor with feelings that you're having about things, and the quality of those relationships can vary from person to person. But I think for me personally, I don't want to be that person who, tries to fix, and it doesn't go the way that I want it to go, because again, like somebody's money is being invested in this, like it is a time investment,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't operate if you're starting to feel like every time you see this person, your stuff is coming up every time and it's overwhelming, then it's time to think about what might be better for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, sorry. Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I just and it's so hard because like trauma focused CBT is kind of what has gotten me in some ways has gotten me to a place where I can now really go there with like the treatment and stuff that I'm doing now. Um, but at the same time, I see a lot of the ways that it harmed me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just have this really complicated relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, that's a whole other video. Um, so the next question that I have is, what do you think are things someone could do to build trust with someone who has been through a traumatic experience or event?
Is this I just want to ask, is this like a friend or is this a client? Like I need to know.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I would kind of say maybe a friend, not really like from like a professional standpoint, maybe just like a friend or a person you're getting to know.
Hmm. Let me just say this really fast, right? I don't want anyone, please don't send me any hate mail. Um, because this is the realm I work in, I have strict boundaries.
Boundaries, good, good.
Okay, and
Yeah,
so for my friends and family now,
and your personal life.
if
Hmm.
right, if like her, when we're friends, of course we're gonna talk things through. We're friends, but when I see it that it's actually trauma, because see, there's a difference now. If it's just stuff we need to talk out and just problems, life, it's life. But when my friend is presenting with PTSD symptoms because of a past traumatic event, I'm going to be honest and tell them and try to refer them to someone who can really, really help them. Why am I saying that? Because number one, as a trauma provider, right, I get a lot of people who not only personally as friends want to utilize my skills and maybe intimate partners or like
One.
relationships they are seeking me out for. You can't have all of this and some therapy, baby. You need to pick one or the
What?
other. You
What?
feel me? Pick one. I'm not gonna put it down on you and then roll over and have a whole session. Now tell me, how do you feel about it? We're not gonna do it, boo. We're not. Because guess what? Boundaries. I need to live. And as your friend, it's unfair to me when you know this is what I do all day up into the night, and then you roll up on me and use me for that. That's not, no. So I'm going to always refer my friends to a clinician. When it's just friendly, you just want to talk some crap and talk about men and the housewives or what he did, she said, whatever. I got you, boo. But when it get deep and you tell me I can't sleep and I'm having night terrors and other symptoms, I'm gonna be like, hold on, I got somebody for you because I'm too close to you.
Yeah.
and I want to make sure you get the help that you need without it being biased. That's just me. So I hope, don't send me no hate mail, but that's how I feel. I'm getting
Boundary.
my boundaries, child. I'm tired. Thanks. I just want to drink. Okay. That's how I feel.
I mean, there's a reason why ethically we can't just bring our best friend in the chair and have her as a client. There's a
Right.
reason for that.
Right.
True.
Yeah. Yes. I was gonna say, wait, so what do you think things are things someone could do to build trust with someone who has been through a traumatic experience? So I guess from my side, since I'm not like a clinician, I'm not like a professional in that world, I'm more of like a recipient. So yeah, I would say, take things very, very slowly in terms of like developing either a new friendship or if it is already an existing friendship, like just take things very slowly. Don't take their stuff on. So like
Yeah.
similar to what Toshia was saying. Toshia, right?
So she is.
Toshia, I'm sorry. Toshia, similar to what Toshia was saying. Um wait, what was Toshia saying? uh,
I ain't gonna take on your stuff. I love you though.
not gonna not gonna take on people's stuff.
uh,
You're gonna have boundaries.
that's
Heal, right? Heal. Like people have to heal themselves. Like yeah, you give them the tools.
yep.
They learn tools. They learn strategies, but they have to heal themselves. So like I would say, firm boundaries, but also don't take on their stuff. They have to heal themselves in their own time and their own timeline. Um, so yeah, you kind of have to just kind of like watch that relationship and maybe like kind of reorganize or reorient like uh how close y'all are gonna be or I don't know, things like that. That's kind
Listen, I have gone out with friends and we're having drinks and I am having a therapy session. And I'm just like, wait a minute, did you sneak in a therapy session on me? Like, what is this? I went out with a guy, you know who you are, and he sat up and told me his whole life. This was our second date, and he broke down crying about his life and problems, and I was like, I don't know what to do with all of this right now. I just came for dinner. Like, you understand what I'm saying? I'm not cold. I I am very compassionate, but I do have to have, as a professional, I have to have my boundaries because I take on enough, and it's enough for me to make sure I don't have secondary PTSD, right? And I need to live, right? I need to be okay. I just can't take all of it on. There's no more room. There's no space for
of
everybody.
space.
No.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Ooh. So the next question that I was going to ask was, were there any things that didn't rub you right about the book? And once again, if y'all want me to start, I can because I have a list right here.
I know you itching to start.
Should I start? Okay, should I
Go
start?
ahead.
Okay, let's see.
Ooh, he's so ready. Oh my god.
I think so. It's a combination of like the fact that like, I've been on like this therapy journey, mental health journey for like a minute now, and also that like I'm a writer. I think it's kind of like a combination of both of those things. But anyway, so the first one of many is that like there was really no rebuke of gender roles or acknowledgement that most child care falls onto women. So I noticed that like a lot of it was like, oh yeah, well if the mother is not attuned to the child, or not a lot of it, all of it was if attuned to the child. And yes, obviously like mothers and birthing people like they breastfeed. So and that's a huge thing and skin to skin contact, that's a huge thing. Um, but I did not like that all of that responsibility fell onto the mothers always. There was never any, I have smoke for him, wow. I have mad smoke for him. There was never any acknowledgement of like a paternal figure, or maybe if there's other mothers or whatever, like, you know what I mean? It was always on like it was, oh, the mother just wasn't attuned enough. The mother had too much turmoil in her life. The mother this, the mother that, and like yes,
Or how about the mother was getting beaten in the next room? And I was like, oh my God, can we talk about the man and why he's beating the mother?
okay,
But okay, sorry. I'm just,
no. This is
He was giving very much Freud. He was giving, and think about like psychiatry is its own problematic
oh,
thing. So, and they go to med school, like it's a different kind of world there. But Freud will tell you, if you know anything about Freud, it was giving very much Freud. It was very much archaic. I mean, some
yes.
of the things like sure, it made sense, but like thinking about, and that's why like my orientation has to be more than just what an old white man came up with, because that's like the psychology side is very much what an old white man said a long time ago, or even recently. Some of
okay.
the more recent ones are like what a privileged white man said about thinking about this thing differently. And so that part, like a lot of those parts, there were some things that from that were personal to me, and for reasons those were blind spots and like really thinking about it more deeply. But it was also definitely like, here you go with mama having to do this and mama having to do that. And so what does daddy
Did
do?
mama raise the baby by herself? Like
What's the point
help
of
step,
daddy then?
It was no daddy.
just none. Just none.
Period.
Child. So
And
my next
so,
rebuke.
Rebuke.
But I mean, I feel like he kind of alludes to this, to be fair. But my next rebuke was like the trial and error of like psychology and psychiatry. I know that like, all of these various fields of human endeavor are like figuring themselves out as they go and learning and growing, blah blah, and moving forward. Um, but it was also the fact that there was no mention of apology or retribution or accountability, and really justice really is what I'm thinking about. And so like it's wonderful that you wrote this amazing book and talked about like how important trauma is, especially to non-Black communities, now that it's I guess big enough of a deal to people who are seen as normal or whatever, or moneyed or whatever you want to call it. But um, what about the people who y'all did CBT on for the last 40 years and who y'all gaslit into a different reality and feeling like they made everything up?
oh,
Like, bro, sis,
mm,
and so, like that is what made my blood boil. It was like, okay, like I understand, like like we're all learning every day. We're learning new things. We're upgrading our techniques, but like, don't leave them behind. Like, what about them? Are y'all sending emails? Are y'all reaching out? Are y'all calling this?
no,
Right,
no. And they're
right.
not going to. And that's just part of their trial and error. And that's just part of the research.
Advancement, the science. Mhm.
I
Yeah.
hate
So,
it. I hate it. I hate it.
but you should not be surprised. They've done that to us
Mhm.
forever.
Medically, literally medically.
So
And
I wasn't surprised. I knew where this book was coming from. And I took it for what it was. It was a white man's view of trauma.
and
I, yeah.
to add on to that, and even though this is really kind of jargony, but I thought about like the origins of the field and how like the lay person really should know what that all entails. So like way back in the day, beyond 100 years ago, maybe even, um, therapists were psychiatrists. So psychiatrists went to medical school, got medical degrees, and they were the only people who did therapy. But that's not a therapy degree, right? So there were the idea is that psychology is a science, or for the most part. Then you have psychologists, and I don't remember the whole thing there. I should, because I'm learning it. But then you have psychology that comes along that says, no, we can do this a different way. Psychologists have to have a doctorate degree, a doctoral degree, right? So they create this other thing, and I forget how they get there, but it's still based on coming from the medical model. And there are many places that still operate in a medical model. So the way how I'm technically in the counseling psychology field, which is part of psychology, but I'm also learning as mental health counselor. And social work is also a little bit different where that is concerned. But because I'm doing mental health counseling, a while back, counselors, decided like they were going to break off from psychology because they thought this could be learned without a doctoral degree. Just give them some more credits and it can be figured out. APA was like, absolutely not. That's not it. That's watered down. People need to get their doctoral, that their PhD in their psyche, even though we know that the rates of being able to get into these programs, first of all, they take 4 people a year. We're gonna heal the world on 4 people a year is the thing. So, anywho, now ACA and APA operate completely differently, and you cannot there's even things down to like accreditation of programs where one accreditor is like, there can be no one in this program who got a doctoral degree in psychology. Their degree has to be in counselor education. And this is a whole lot of information, but this affects how people can receive, a treatment, and or what kind of person is treating them, what their school of thought is, how they're trained. A lot of doctoral programs in psychology are teaching CBT. You might get some Adlerian thing, but like Adler is years and years ago. And then social work is completely different. And I think like, I don't know if it's the state of Maryland or federally, but like counselors can't take Medicaid. And so there's all these things, or all these things that go into access to services and who's sitting in front of you and what they believe that can affect what your journey is like. And I think Toshia wanted to add something there, but all of that was necessary. And I feel like lay people should know this because it's not as simple just finding the person who takes your insurance and we're going to give it a go. And if you need meds, I can't give you meds. So if you come to my office and you tell me, even if I'm fully licensed, you tell me that you're thinking about meds and I don't immediately refer you to a psychologist or tell you that it's coming, or a psychiatrist, then I am already doing you a disservice because I know I have no intention of giving that to you because I know that can't come from me. You need a referral, or you need something, a medical doctor to give you that, because only psychiatrists can prescribe meds.
Hello, and I am the queen of referrals, okay? Because I can't do it all. And I am a social worker, and social work is new in my opinion. That whole clinical social work piece is just about as old as I am. So it's really new, right? Where social workers decided, oh my God, it's more than us just going out here in these communities doing this work. These folks are presenting with some real mental health issues. So what I need to do is I need to do some micro work. I need to work one on one with this individual and help them reevaluate things and help them find a new way of healing. Oh, and then I see that, oh my God, I'm in this home, I'm helping them with this, and the whole family needs some help. Lord, let me try to help these folks. And so there we go with the clinical piece, right? And then, oh, you're presenting with a whole lot more mental illness or mental health problems than I am able to help you with. Now, because school has taught me which pill does what, I'm going to refer you to a psychiatrist who can help you further and get you the relief that you deserve. And I'm going to keep in touch with this psychiatrist because I know what they're probably going to do. Because I need to see how this meds that the psychiatrist is going to assign to you, how it's affecting you. Because at some point I might have to, if you allow it, communicate with your psychiatrist. What I'm saying is, it seems very, not fragmented, but compartmentalized. But literally, we have to know about one another. I am, I am going to, if I get a child that's presenting with more than what I can handle, I'm going to send it to a child psychologist. And with me doing so, I already know that I have done a good deed because this child needs way more than I can give. They're presenting with eating disorders. I need to send them to a child psychologist, but I'm going to still help them. I can help them behavioral wise, but I know if they're getting good help there from the psychologist. And then that child psychologist might be like, you know what, you might need some meds. I'm going to send this. So we need to know of one another, but we need to make sure that we don't have egos in the way and that we are putting the patient or the client first, because it's not about us, it's about the clients and their needs, not what we think that's best. But we need to hear the client and see what they're willing to do, and we need to work with them and put them first. I mean, I just love what I do. I literally could not. I don't think I could really be doing anything else. I
And
love my profession.
all that to say that his lens is very much within the framework of, and there's still pushes today to have
Yeah.
things go back to the science of things. So you need to check to get a diagnosis of PTSD. You have to check, a certain amount out of certain. I think it's 4 out of 7 symptoms
Yeah.
with that. So like the DSM is based on, and the DSM is also a political document that was
Child,
Okay, let,
don't
devised.
let me
we
start.
ain't got enough time. Don't even start me on that DSM-5.
The DSM, don't let me start. Don't let me
I mean,
Who wrote that? No, I'm just, kidding. I'm just kidding. Cut that. Cut that. Edit that out there. Who? Who keep meddling with it? Okay, I'm done.
DSM, child.
so it's all coming from that same agenda of like it's not legit unless it's a science where you can quantify it, you can plot the points and say this is what this person has. And of course, I think it was the 4 or the 5, like pharma is very much interested in plotting the points to be able to give you the drug. So it's
Mm.
bigger than just the psychiatrist came up with this. It's
Well.
the system of, and this is why
Mm.
again we need revolution and liberation for a lot of things, that keeps it together. So that's where he's coming from. He's coming from very much that, and he also like he got his degree in a completely different time, and so that also goes into it. So I think at some points where I was like, rah, then I was like, he's just talking his stuff because of this, and
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So my next bullet here is ableism. And what I have written here is all chronic pain because of trauma. And I know like I did a bit more reading into this. And it obviously chronic pain has to do with the nervous system, and trauma can disrupt the nervous system. That's a lot of what this book is about. But I don't know, like there also did, I don't know, just kind of, I was like, is some of this ableist? Like, you know what I mean? And like even quantifying everything and categorizing everything as like a mental illness or a disorder or this. And like it, like I've heard critiques from people who are living with ADHD and other neurodivergent people, and they've said that therapists always try to pathologize them
Yeah.
versus this is how we see the world, and y'all see the world in a completely different way. So when we talk about the DSM, it was created by cisgender white men who were able, and so that is going to come from a very particular lens, a very particular place of like, oh, everybody else is abnormal or everybody else is lesser than and needs to be healed or needs to be fixed. So I really wonder what people who are neurodivergent or who experience chronic pain would have to say about this. I really wonder what they have to say, you know, but that is something that I did write down. Um,
I tend to believe that, I know from the clientele that I work with, and I'm just gonna just throw it out there. I would say about 85% of my clients, their chronic pain does come from trauma. I know my chronic pain comes from my past trauma, although I'm healed emotionally, right? I still get triggered out of nowhere, right? Because the body does hold on to the trauma no matter how much I try to release. And I've released a great deal because I have incorporated energy healing in with a holistic healing in with the clinical healing, right? And I remember using the drugs or whatever that was pushed onto me to help with the depression, the suicidal ideation, all of that back in my youth, in my 20s. I did need those drugs to help me to stabilize. And once I was stable, I was able to accept holistic healing, which helped me really cope and deal with my chronic pain. So the chronic, I mean, it is, in my opinion, for me. who I deal with, my people, they do suffer from a lot of chronic pain. And it started with, what they dealt with and what the brain is, those signals being sent. And then when you think about it, like the brain and working with the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Just for a lot of sexual trauma survivors, a lot of digestion and feminine issues that they deal with because of the past trauma. It just happens to be so. So, I mean, it just made me, I was really happy that he even brought up a little bit of the holistic healing, and I mean a blip. He did not go into it deeply. You see how he kept on that scientific mumbo jumbo, knowing good and darn well he could have gave them folks a little bit more information, right?
Holistic,
On that holistic, because yes,
that
breath
has been around
like
for
you
forever.
became a teacher of breath work, pranayama, all this stuff, meditation, how it can rewire and stuff your brain. Hello, he did not go into that deep enough, in my opinion. But
And
yeah,
that's been around for forever. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah. It took a long time for him to even touch on the meditation piece. I thought he would have gotten into that a little deeper, but I digress.
Um, so then please let me know if y'all want to like insert like some of the things that y'all thought, because I have more. But let me know. But like I don't know
I
if
like this list. I
it's
like
okay.
this list.
Okay, because I don't want to feel like I don't want to like dominate the conversation.
Oh, the
But
list is great.
okay, okay. Okay, cool. So the next one that I have is on page 137. It's the disbelief of Julian's 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 rape, and little care or sensitivity around his violation, and the first time mentioning a male victim of sexual assault. Yeah.
Mm.
So one of the big problems that I have with this book is I find that a lot of people in general, and more, but more specifically, a lot of men feel incredibly uncomfortable when they see other men being vulnerable or even soft or weak or whatever you want to call it. And he did a lot of talking about soldiers, which was great, and PTSD. And that's even how we have an understanding of like, that's how we even have a diagnosis, you know? So I know a lot of that started with people who were veterans and who came back and things. Um, but there was this way, and I was picking up on it throughout the entire book. There was this way that he would always describe his male clients, and it was always in this weird juxtaposition of like, oh, look at this big strong man with muscles, and like, but when he talks about this thing that happened to him, he's a little boy again, and it it didn't feel super duper compassionate. It kind of felt like this is maybe not odd, but this is like, oh, would you look at this like weird juxtaposition of like this man with big muscles, but he's just so fragile or hurt inside. And it didn't feel good for me as a person who is a man reading that. It didn't feel good. And this was not the only example. This was just one example. But a lot of times when he spoke about the men in this book, he lacked um, grace and care, and with the women, um, I noticed, okay, with the women, I noticed that he what? It kind of felt like he expected them to be like emotional, if you will,
Vulnerable.
and to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there was this one woman I think we spoke about earlier who came in, and each time they were different with their moods, or maybe I'm mixing them up with another client, but there was a client who basically presented in a very particular way. Maybe at work they were like a boss or something like that, and in the therapy dynamic they were that same kind of like boss and very hard or whatever. And there was a male client that he had who same thing, like he was like a boss or whatever. He came in, but the way he described the two of them was radically different. He
Mm.
described the woman, and he came from a place of like kind of understanding like, oh, this is a person who's been traumatized. Versus with the man, it felt very ego driven, and it felt very much like, oh, he's just so pompous and he's so blah blah. But then when we really got to like the real nitty gritty, it's because he was traumatized. I don't know. It just like something about the way he talked about his male clients, I really did not like. It was really really off putting, and yeah, I don't really know. I don't really understand. I don't really understand. But you know, therapists are people. So you know, um, if you have your own bias, like it's gonna come out. Like, and we all have bias. You know what I mean? We all have wounds. We all have bias. But it was really jarring for me as a reader to like pick up on that, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that.
You're on mute, sis.
Oh, you're on mute.
Okay.
Okay.
I will just say this really fast. What you're reading is what people are seeing and feeling in the chair,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which brings up cultural competency.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel that they don't need to have any
Mm-hmm.
cultural competency or non-bias. So you just literally summed up the book. It's coming from a bias, and there is no room for bias as a clinician. But you know, people say their truth. They tell their truths from their vision in their books. So we get a glimpse inside like who he truly is and how he's feeling. So I knew, I mean, while I do really, really love this book, I do take it with a grain of salt. Like you started it from the beginning. This is coming from a cis het, and I don't know if he's a cis het, right? Well, I know he's a cis, but I don't know if he's like a heterosexual or whatever male.
I think so because I have other critiques. But anyway, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh Lord, okay.
I also think that, like, thinking about the commercialization of what therapy is via the book, right? I think I read some of it as him doing that on purpose for audience. So
Okay.
making it look
Yes.
that way, and in an attempt to explain, and thinking about people who might be picking up this book who have no
There
background
you go.
for therapy, who might also
Yes.
be white males or whatever. And so from this kind of stereotypical, or what pop culture would be able to understand. And so when you commercialize, the therapeutic world, that you can distort some things, just like how we have a lot of terminology that people say in regular life: narcissist, gaslight, trauma bond,
Yeah.
that are just out of context all day. You just gotta scroll past it and roll
All,
your eyes.
and just all of a sudden, all of Twitter is a therapist. They just diagnosing somebody every day. Did you just
Narcissist,
snort like that? I knew you was a narcissist. Oh my
gaslight, like
God.
trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a trauma bond. Like,
Oh, and the
wait,
trauma bond. Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
a trauma. I'm like, okay.
that's not a trauma bond.
So even when I found out, I was like, oh, I was using it wrong, and I'm in this program. Oh,
Oh my
That is so funny.
God.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the next one that I have, and this I only have two more. Okay, only two more. So the next one I have occurs on page 190, and it's what does it say? Vets, Black veterans were treated horribly. Acting like integration in the armed forces is good is very telling. Oh wow. So yeah, I guess he alluded to like, oh, integration was so good, and like, oh, like yeah. Anyway, um, and maybe yeah. I mean, not maybe. This is personal stuff, obviously. Like that, like he's pro-military, pro-cops. I get that feeling. But anyway, and then the last one is trauma is the individual. Wait, trauma is the new vegan. Is that ableist? Okay, so what I have here, right? I guess what I was trying to say in that is back in like 2012, when I first started my journey, like I said, you know, there were all of these studies, there were all of these videos about like how, like, oh, if you just went vegan, that would cure your depression. If you just went vegan, it would reverse your cancer. If you just went vegan, it would do this, it would do that.
Dr. Sebi.
And pardon?
The Dr. Sebi diet for your
Dr.
mental
Sebi,
health.
Dr. Sebi Chow, if you went vegan, then it would cure this. So there was that huge push happening while I was healing, and I went vegetarian. I'm still a vegetarian, and I don't regret that. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I always kind of feel a little skeptical, health skepticism, when somebody says like, oh, if you just take this pill or if you just do this one thing, it's gonna solve everything in your whole life. And so I guess I'm wondering if in some ways this sort of intense focus on trauma as the end all be all, like, oh, everybody's traumatized or like whatever, and like if we just cure everybody's trauma, chronic pain will go away, this will go away, everything will go away. So I want to see how y'all feel about that.
Well, Patrice said it best. I mean, for a lot of us, I mean, this, and you said it too, honey, we're going to continuously be compounded by trauma. We live in America. Okay, this is textbook. Just there's the map, the USA. I mean, literally, how are we going to? I'm sorry, I'm going to always go back to my people. That's my focus, main focus. How are we going to get rid of chronic pain and trauma and all these problems, chronic disease and all of this stuff when we're getting the short end of the stick? When we're being traumatized repeatedly, when we're being killed uh, weekly, daily, like there's no way. I mean, but will they care? If they solve their trauma, will they care?
Well,
When
well,
trauma wasn't cool, did they care?
well,
Huh? So, people can miss me, period. It's just kind of like when people go, you got high blood pressure. You need to go on a strict vegan diet and work out 50 times a day. That's on you, sis. That's not, no, it's not on me. That's in my ding dong blood. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, Agent Orange. Okay? Like, it's all up and through there. Okay, I was a vegan, damn near to falling out from meat and protein, this and that. I did everything I could. I was small and tiny and skinny. You blow on me, I'd fall over from losing weight. And what did it do? Not a damn thing. I still have blood pressure. It's in my blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's not one size fits all. And yeah, people may have trauma. What you need to do is give people an opportunity. People need opportunity, right? And half of their problems would go away, and maybe they wouldn't have high blood pressure. Maybe they wouldn't have chronic pain. Maybe if you help, you understand, there's just too many factors with
yeah,
our community to tell us about anything. We know we got trauma. We've been new. Shit, the moment we realized that we look different and then we couldn't trail it back to the right tribe, we knew that there was a problem, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think I just lost track of the
no,
question. I'm
that
just
was
over it. You know, it's the trauma is the new black. Everybody got trauma. Everybody wants trauma. Everybody's bringing it back to the damn trauma. It'll be over in a few years. They'll be over it and moving on. Because at the end of the day, they're still not doing what they need to do for mental health for Americans. If trauma is such a big deal in this country, then why the hell don't everybody have access to mental health?
let's
And
start
the right type of mental health, right?
the right type.
So yeah, I think that like I close my ears to it, and I help people who want the help, and those who don't, I love on them and move on, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody deserves to live their best life,
Yeah,
whether that's with trauma or not. And I'm just sorry, you're not gonna just wake up tomorrow and be over it because it's here and it's our reality. It really is. I
yeah,
mean, for me, I feel like coming from a Vietnam vet,
yeah,
right, a black woman, pure trauma
yeah,
every day.
Yeah.
every day. And I've been expected to still make it and still wake up and smile and work and act like nothing's wrong. I just learned how to heal my trauma. And I'm helping others learn how to heal their trauma. But there is no one size fits all. Stop shaming people about mental health. The one thing I do want us to do is really work on our mental health as a community because we are suffering and we suffer at a large disproportionate rates and we are dying from suicide at a larger rate than other communities. So I want us to work on our shit. And I don't know what they're going to do. Thanks for the book. It still needs to be tweaked for us. I'm just saying. It's just too much. It really is. We just need to learn how to cope and we need to learn how to live within our means. And more of us need to go into mental health and help one another heal. So we need more black mental health professionals. I believe so. Yeah, well, it's not enough.
Yeah.
I also think about with I think it's very important for us to learn about trauma and learn about the things that we experience as trauma and learn about how that manifests itself in different ways, in different aspects of our lives. Where I think, because it can help us like reconceptualize like how we, take care of ourselves and what we need to do for self-care. I put that in quotes because that's another commercialized thing, right?
Okay, let's talk about anyway. Go ahead.
But I also think where it becomes interesting for me is, um everything is trauma focused. What am I lost the word now, but like trauma centered, like something with teaching, education. I can't think of the words now because they've slipped me.
No, but that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you
Yeah.
mean.
So, trauma centered whatever, trauma centered this, trauma centered that. And it all seems, ACEs is now becoming a thing in the education world. A lot of it's come from the education world, and I have smoke with the education world. Um,
Okay. A
and,
major source of trauma or site of trauma rather, yeah.
and it all what it where the issue comes in for me is that we now become the center, the poster child for trauma, but not really the poster child, but we become the example that is always used. We're the one going in the center of the circle to put our trauma on display for the others to learn about what trauma looks like in our communities, or for what this reason or for that reason. And it doesn't make us whole. It's for everyone else's learning, for us to be in the middle of the circle. So when the black
Mm.
kids go on to and be on a panel, I used to work for Teach for America, so I'm going to disclose that. When the black kids are on the panel for the trauma centered thing and trauma centered teaching, I can't believe that I can't remember the word, but it's fine. And then we send them home, and we now watch the panel and we go back and we cry about it in our staff meeting, and we have the whole moment, and we just rinse repeat the cycle of constantly, like, even I resigned from Teacher America during last summer with everything that was going on, because I realized then that everything that I thought was different was fraudulent. And
Mm.
I also realized that I was being expected to kind of provide the trauma entertainment for these people.
Oh yeah,
And I was like, you know what? I opt out of this. I took a pay cut in a pandemic to get away from them.
I know that's
Right?
right.
And that's happening to our kids, especially with it's also in this trauma conversation. And so I don't want it to be that it's a fad thing, because education is one industry. The nonprofit world is one industry where
Oh,
things are fad and they cycle. So now, because we have this thing, ACEs is popular, whatever is popular, we find the
mhm,
black and brown kids to be the center of the thing, and then we send them home. And
mhm.
that's it. But then, are we actually, like, the is the goal to actually get them well at some point, or is it just to talk about it because that's popular right now? And that's where I have the issue is not just that the trauma is being talked about too much, is that it's being talked about and that's the end of the
There's
conversation.
no result. I'm
There's no,
so
there's
tired.
no
I just had to say it. I'm just gonna say this, and I know we're wrapping up. Just what she's saying. Oh my God! Like the fad, the human trafficking is. Oh my Human trafficking wasn't a problem until little Susie got trafficked. Then here come the Lifetime movies and umpteen movies from the part 1, part 3, part 10 about how to go and save this child from overseas. Like, it's just ridiculous. But if you really look at the numbers, like in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's over 80 something percent African American youth, African American black girls. Okay, they love to pull a sister up on the panel to speak about trauma and the trafficking and all this and that, but the money doesn't come to me. The money doesn't come to the organization to help the black and brown children that have been victims of human trafficking. The money goes to the bigger groups. The money goes to the white groups, right? I'm the only black survivor-led organization here in Las Vegas. Disgusting, right? For a while, they wanted to re-exploit me and use my story over and over again to pull in the money until I put my foot down and said, "You worse than a fucking pimp." And you're not going to sit here and use me and my story for me to get re-traumatized for your pockets. Because that's what you guys do. And that's the same thing you're doing with our black bodies strewn about on the street. You're re-exploiting us and doing the clip over and over again, re-traumatized because you sensationalize it. What do you got to call it? Sensationalizing this stuff. And we can't heal. We're on to their bull crap. And now you're doing it with trauma. Trauma. No, we're done with that. What we want is we want real mental health help. We want to really get it out to our communities and let us know it's okay to heal. It's okay to talk about this stuff. It's okay to get therapy. This is a great book that we've read. It's a great resource, but it's not the end all be all, especially for us because our stories aren't in there. I didn't see me in there anywhere.
Not once.
I didn't see my father's vet in there anywhere. I didn't see us. So, I guess we have to write the stories, Patrice.
Yeah.
We got to write the stories because we need a resource because these resources are simply not enough. It's a great beginning, but it is not enough. And it's just happening to us mental health wise and it's happening to us medically.
After I read this, and I think this was I think one of the most valuable parts of the text was the science and stuff in the beginning because I wouldn't have got that nowhere else, right? And I think that's his expertise. It was long, but it was strong, right? Like it did what it was supposed to do. But right after I read this book, I think I went and read like Charlene Carruthers' text. I had to read some other things to then ground me in taking what he was talking about and what was relevant to us in our communities in that moment. And I read a feminist psychotherapy's book that included, it was mostly white feminist psychotherapy, but then I had to read How We Get Free and Sister Outsider. So like you have to companion these texts and he's going to do what he does well. But companion these texts, and that's why, like, I'm gonna always say I have a Black feminist, framework on my theoretical orientation. It can't exist separately, and there's shortcomings in how he talked about a lot of the things, and I think I respected it for what it was, and I learned so much from it that again wouldn't have found in other places. But when you're reading these things, you also got to find those people who are on the margins who are talking about the same things as well. And I would like to see more therapists like create collectives to put this stuff out and to give people the background of some of the things that we've talked about today that people are not going to know about unless they go into these programs. And so I'm going to go into a counseling psychology program to know something that I need to heal. That's not how that's supposed to work.
That works. No.
Yeah. Thank y'all both so much. If nobody else has anything else to say, I was just gonna wrap up. Am I good to wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so I want to once again thank Toshia Shaw and Patrice. What is your last name? Oh my God, Patrice Bryan. Oh my God, Patrice Bryan. Sorry. For joining me today. And one last thing that I wanted to say is that learning about attachment styles and attachment theory and finding the personal development school was groundbreaking for me after years of talk therapy. That is what I needed. kind of from the beginning, learning about attachment styles and attachment theory and reprogramming the subconscious mind. That is what I needed. And so I'm happy to finally have found that. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this, and yeah, have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me stop recording. Stop recording.